Podcasting for Lawyers and Mediators with Dennis DM Meador. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hi, everyone. This is Mac Pierre-Louis. Welcome back to LMIpodcast.com, where we talk about law and conflict resolution topics to educate professionals and everyday people. Today, I am with a marketing guru, person who's going to be really interesting to talk to lawyers, mediators out there who are interested in how they can make an impact in social media and in marketing generally. And that is Dennis DM Meador. Dennis, how are you doing today?
Good. Beautiful day here. I know it's nice and rainy where you're at. That is not a fake background for you. It is for me. So it is not. I'm not on a beautiful stage, but you are sitting in the rain. So glad you could make it.
Yes. Thank you so much. I know I was kind of hustling to get out here, but I'm so grateful that you waited for me, and just really am interested in hearing you out today because you do what I do. We both love helping people share their information, share their brand to the world. And it's something I've been doing for years, but you've been doing this for many, many years. You look really young, but I was checking out your bio and you've been basically a small business guru since you were a kid. So I'd like for you to just talk a little bit about yourself, who you are, before we get into some of the questions on how lawyers and especially mediators can make an impact across social media and to promote their brands. So what I do know about you, Dennis, is that you have quite the background. I mean, I believe you're a pastor. You've traveled the world. You've built churches and businesses, and you went into advertising and worked with a lot of incredible people. And I've been checking you out on YouTube, so you have a pretty big following. And of course, you have the Legal Podcast Network, which is what you are doing today with me. So go ahead and share a little bit about yourself and so people can get to know you.
Sure. I have been a entrepreneur since I was 14 years old. Very quickly, I basically managed all of the jobs that a 12, 13-year-old boy would do. But I was the one who went and got the jobs, collected the money, and then resold the job to my brother and his friends and kept a portion of it. So they would go do the jobs. They didn't have to interact with adults and knock on doors and ask for money. And I didn't have to mow the stinking lawns or shovel walks or whatever else. So I kind of learned very young that you see a lot more success connecting people together as opposed to, trying to connect to people. So, and then as I went in, I was like a young old man. When I graduated high school at 18, I was a pastor. I got married at 19, had my first kid at like 22, and was an entrepreneur / consultant, in various things through the years. I've had agencies that were social agencies. I built big social agencies, text message agencies, SEO agencies, brand agencies, and I've seen several of them go from not much to 4 or 5 million a year, which isn't too bad. And that brings me to now. About 22 years ago, I kind of niched down into working with lawyers and really learned that it was a personality fit for me. In what I love about working with attorneys, and because people always ask me why attorneys, is you are trained to work in places of logic instead of emotion.
Yeah.
And many people use emotion to sell, but I don't like that. I feel like that's manipulative. So for me to be able to get into a process where I just sit down with somebody, talk to them, whether it's phone, Zoom, whatever it is, and I could say, well, I hear your point, but have you considered this? And then we could point, counterpoint, back and forth, use logic, and then come to a conclusion together. And more often than not, that conclusion ended up being in my favor and they became my clients. So I really enjoyed that. About a little over a year ago, I pre-launched this product. Me and
Yeah.
my former partner, he bought me out. We had a 5-year option. He bought me out, and I was like, okay. We had gone from less than $1 million to over $5 million in 5 years under my side of working with the product.
Mm.
But that's fine. He made the choice. So I was like, okay, what do I do? Now we're 5 months from my wedding, 5 months from my wedding. And I go to my wife and I say, by the way, me and my partner no longer working together. She didn't bat an eye. My now wife,
Yeah.
obviously at the time she's my fiance.
Yeah.
I have a book of ideas that I keep 50, 100 ideas. Whenever I come up with a business idea, even if it's something I know I'll never do, I have a whole ice machine, like kingdom set up on paper. I have, restaurant ideas. I have other marketing businesses. And I just jot them down. Sometimes I
Mhm.
go all the way down to the margins, the products, the sourcing, and sometimes it's more just basic stuff. Well, the podcast network was one of those things that I had in my ear for a couple of years, attorneys asking me, do you do podcasting? And my partner was like, let's just stick to this and this. Fine. So I launched the podcast network here a year ago, May 1st. Here we are a year later. We started at zero. We have roughly 150 firms and people that serve law firms with shows with us now and in our marketing program. And we've got about 40 people on the team. So very, very fortunate to see this idea take off. And I think because the seed of podcasting helps, but once they see everything that we do holistically with it, because we can stack content, I think it puts us in a much better position. If you click on packages, it's probably the easiest way. If you click there, right on packages, middle,
Where is that?
it's
Oh,
right
right here.
there. You
I
go.
see it.
Click on that. If you
Yep.
scroll down, you can see we give you, for every one podcast you do, we give you 30 pieces of content. We
Hmm.
will actually post that content for you on up to 10 outlets. We do the finished podcast in both video for YouTube and audio and put that on 25 outlets. We
Hmm.
transcribe and edit the podcast into an FAQ section to add to your website. So for 30 minutes of an attorney's time, if they just did one show a month, for 30 minutes of their time, that is a month's worth of marketing. For an hour a month of their time, now we're doing 2 posts a day on up to 10 outlets. Now we're doing 2 full shows a month. We're doing 4 to 6 pages. And then with Thought Leader every week, morning, noon, and night, we're posting 3 times a day on up to 10 outlets. We're producing a show every week, 2 to
Yeah.
3 pages of content for the website every week. So when they realize everything that comes with it, it's not just, oh, I got a podcast that's going to be thrown on YouTube and Apple, and then it's my job to kind of promote it from there. And that's
Yep.
kind of where we started. We started from, we'll make it, you get it out there. And we learned very quickly, attorneys were just like, my podcast isn't doing well. Well, how are you promoting it?
Exactly.
What do you mean promoting it? Well, you got to promote it, So that's what we're doing now, seeing success and enjoying it.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. I've checked this out, and the idea of being able to, you know, do the podcast recording, but have you handle everything else. That's what you talk about when you say turnkey, right? Like
Correct.
you handle all the steps, the promotion of it and all. However, the lawyer, him or herself, still needs to do some work. And
All
I,
they have to do, we provide a co-host who asks them the questions,
yep,
and we send them the questions ahead of time according to their content plan, which is built based on their ideal client profile.
yep,
So all they have to do is show up and be ready to answer 7 to 10 questions that they probably get all the time anyway.
yep,
And then that's where we go to work and take it from there. So yes, they do need to do something, but really it's minimal. It's show
yeah,
up and talk for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, really. I
yep.
don't know very many attorneys, especially if they're litigators. I don't know very many attorneys that have a hard time talking for 20 minutes when you give them the questions ahead
Absolutely.
of
You
time.
just got to show up, look good, and talk smart. That's it.
Exactly.
And then once the work is done, they also need to assist in promoting their own brand, right? And I think that's a big problem sometimes that people don't take too seriously. Like when I have a guest on, I will promote it, but I've noticed sometimes the guest does not go further. and
Hmm.
actually, promote themselves, which is kind of shocking to me because I'm like, look, it's free marketing,
Yeah.
so get it out there. So let's talk more specifically then about lawyers and mediators. You've been focused on lawyers for all these years, and you're not a lawyer
Hmm.
yourself, right?
No.
No, but you
I like to
jive with
tell
us.
people, go ahead. Go ahead.
But you
What was the
jive with
question?
us so well.
Yeah, it's a temperament thing, and I think it's a logic,
Yeah.
I mean, I could use the word intelligence thing, I mean, we all hate to brand ourselves as especially intelligent, but
Mhm.
I'd like to think that I can hold conversations with very intelligent people, which hopefully for me means that, that's an indicator of my ability to match them. So that's what it was. I'm not a lawyer. I barely graduated high school. It was easy for me. So it was like I just showed up for tests. I
Yeah.
was like 1,500 graduating class. I was like 1,012 out of
Mhm.
1,500, you know? So, um, and then I went to an unaccredited Bible Institute. But then I got into marketing and advertising, selling advertising. I liked it. I liked the concept of it. I liked how it helped businesses. Back then it was logos and paper. And
Yeah.
then obviously we moved into digital in the early 2000s. But I've always, that is kind of how I came into this. It wasn't, I was a lawyer and I liked marketing better. It wasn't, anything other than I got into marketing. I loved it. I started creating my own companies. I loved it. I started selling to attorneys. I loved it. And I started creating companies for marketing for attorneys. That's
Got
kind
it.
of how the progress has been.
Yeah, so your focus has always been on lawyers, but as you know, this show's name is Lawyers and Mediators International.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you know too much about mediators, but basically,
I've had a lot of conversations with them through the years simply
yeah.
because they kind of, they kind of move in and out that legal circle.
Mhm.
And some will say they shouldn't be. That's not the point. The point
Yeah.
is I've definitely had a ton of conversations with them.
Yes, and so as mediators, we're neutral in the trade. Our goal is very simple: is to help people who are in dispute resolve their differences, and we have some ethical constraints that bind us, like confidentiality, and letting people know that what the process is voluntary. Okay, unless it's a court-ordered mediation, but there are specific things that impact mediators in this space. But when it comes to marketing, I've noticed that there's not much attention put on mediators. Lawyers get all the love. Okay, I'm both, so I know. And there's a
Right.
whole lot of people, trying to get me to buy marketing packages and stuff like that on Google. Whereas as a mediator, no one knows I exist. So, what can you speak to that population a little bit and how maybe the things you do for lawyers can also help and assist mediators in trying to get their brand out there.
Absolutely. So I think that one of the things that, and you actually touched on it a bit earlier, and I think that and this might not be like super loved by all of your audience, but you made a statement that really tells me, it really kind of answered a question for me, because I would always talk to mediators and then they would say, if people just understood, we're impartial, we don't make, a ton of money. It's a sit down for a day or two at usually 400-ish bucks an hour.
Yeah.
So, what could cost 50,000 through the court process could cost like 8,000 or 4,000 through our process. But people just don't get it. They just don't know it. So, on the one side, we know there's a need for education. On the other side, there seems to be a frustration from mediation and arbitration, which is, and you use and it might not be an exact quote, but it shouldn't be our job to educate them. That, I think, has been the challenge for this particular, and I'm going to just call it niche of law, as
Mhm.
opposed to a separate category. I consider it a niche of law. It's like, you need to learn this, but I shouldn't have to teach you. And I think that the most successful mediators are the ones who embrace the educator sort of the education marketing platform versus those who just say, well, if I just put my brand in front of them, then hopefully they'll use me. I think that has been, because I mean it's been like over a decade now that I've been talking to them, and
Yeah.
the ones that I can convince to make content that is about helping people understand why divorce, or why, mediation versus a divorce process, why mediation versus a litigation process and real estate or whatever, like the ones that I could convince that it was their job to educate the potential clients have always done well with me.
Yeah.
But the ones that say it's not my job to educate them, they tend to struggle because you're expecting people to have a set of knowledge that they do not. No one's born with knowledge. We have to accrue it.
Yeah.
And if we don't accrue it, then how are we going to know better?
Yeah. Well, let me pause you on something. I think before you and I started recording, we were talking about that, the education part.
Yes.
And so just for the audience, I don't know if I had mentioned it now during the recording. So in case folks wanted to know more, so I'd like to go more into it with you. So I think what I
Yeah.
had said was that you correctly identified is lawyers oftentimes are the gatekeepers of mediation. They're the ones with the parties, with the clients. And when lawyers bring their parties to us as mediators, they educate their client, right?
Right.
We as mediators don't have to do that. And this is why mediators like me love when the two parties have attorneys, because then my job is just to help both sides come to an agreement. But sometimes parties come to me without lawyers. To some mediators, that's a big problem because now you got to sit there and you have to educate them as well. You can't give them legal advice because that's not your role. But at the
Right.
same time, if you don't give them some information, their constraints, their metric for measuring what is fair to offer or what is completely, far to offer, uh, is completely skewed because they don't know the law. They don't know the whole package, the whole system that we live in. And I think mediators take that for granted. And so this is why some mediators prefer not to assist folks who come to them who don't have attorneys. But
Hmm.
I think it's an untapped market out there where there are a lot of people who don't have attorneys who want to use a mediator.
Right.
And this is where then the education comes in. So the mediator can, I think, to use your word, is they can become their own, media empire, for themselves to try to reach out to those folks about education. So yeah, we're on the same page. Just wanted to bring up the fact that I had mentioned it before we started recording to you.
Well, and you also mentioned, so, you have two sets of people that you market to. One that's a little more sure, one that you feel like in the long run would serve you better, is what I'm hearing. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
The one that is the sure opportunity, the sure source, is the attorneys. Now,
correct.
the problem with that is you're getting them late stage. They're already maybe at an impasse, and so you're untangling. And I'm just making
Yeah,
assumptions here based
that's
on the
oftentimes the case.
process.
Hmm.
Versus if they come in by themselves, yes,
Yeah,
there is some education, but maybe not as much untangling. Now, that being said, how would I market if I were a mediator? I would have a two-pronged approach.
yeah,
So having a podcast, and I love the podcast format for marketing for professionals, any sort of intellectual property owning professional, whether it's, mortgage, real estate, whatever it is. What I love about, podcasting and what I call authoritative positioning marketing.
okay.
So it's not about this brand that I want you to have an affinity for. It's for my brain that I want you to have respect for.
Yeah,
And so,
that's good.
two podcasts or two types of ways. One podcast would be, if I were a mediator, I would be interviewing referring attorneys, either ones that do or could
Yeah,
do more, or especially I wish were referring to me. Podcasting can be a great way, that's just a relationship builder. If you say to somebody, let me take you to coffee, they're going to be like, well, what for? I don't know you, right? For the most part.
it's happened
But if you
actually.
say, hey, I've got this podcast and I'd love to have you come on and talk about this subject,
Yeah,
they come on, that relationship's built. And now all of a sudden, you've got this another referral network, just from us podcasting starting in January of this year, we have
mhm,
about 10 or so now referring relationships where they're marketing agencies or they do something else working with attorneys, but they like us and what we do, and we just refer. This morning I had 4 emails that I sent to my sales guys
Hmm.
from podcasting. And that wasn't my anticipated thing was the end result of, oh, hopefully a lawyer sees this and becomes my client.
Yeah.
And yet I've gotten, I mean, we get 2 to 3 call-ins a week of lawyers who watch us on on a podcast and call in. But like I said, I had 3 or 4 this morning from referral relationships.
Yeah.
So you can market through relationship marketing to the attorneys, have them on your podcast, maybe have, some important key ones as regulars, speak to issues, speak to speak to whatever it is that allows you to then have some symbiosis, and then take your second set of clients,
Hmm.
which is the actual end person, and
Yeah.
speak to them as well, because you can have that referring relationship that speaks to the potential relationship.
True.
So you can it's kind of like you can do it 3 different ways. You can meet with attorneys just to kind of have that camaraderie and talk about the industry and
Hmm.
get granular and geeky. And you and 5 people are going to like it, but you're
Yeah.
going to have a relationship, right?
Yep.
Or you can talk to them together and say, hey, let's talk about this and talk about the problems and talk about the end user of our clients and the advantages of having an attorney and then going to a mediator. Or you could just do a show by yourself that's speaking directly to them.
Yeah.
And then, as you talked about, then you just stack it from there, creating shorts, reels, audiograms, static posts, and I am outlet agnostic. I'm not one of those people that say, oh, you should only be on, LinkedIn and Facebook, and that's it. Like, no,
Hmm.
I will put you on anything and everything you let me put you on.
Got it. Got it. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, well, we talked about neutrality a little bit, but let me do a little bit of theorizing with you. So imagine that mediator John Doe, who mediates
Hmm.
personal injury claims between insurance companies and injured people. Okay. So that's John Doe. And what are some tips for him to market his conflict resolution or mediation practice in a way that showcases his neutrality? Because the concern would be a mediator out there who mediates personal injury cases, or PI as we call it. They might feel, well, if I'm doing podcasts where I'm talking, let's say I'm a solo talking to the void, right, to social media, and I'm talking about things from the perspective of an injured claimant. I
Hmm.
don't think that too many, um, you know, insurance companies or lawyers for insurance companies are gonna want to use me as a mediator because they might think that I'm biased, against people who have been against towards people who have been injured. And the opposite is also true. People, if I'm starting to just contact potential referrals, lawyers, for insurance companies, and we talk about the industry, and what happens in these injury cases. I wonder if there's injured people out there who might be a little suspicious, who might not feel comfortable about, how I'm always having on my show folks who are from the system, from the industry. So, how do you think we can deal with the balancing, the just
I
because?
would say creating, so there's a couple different ways. One is create a few different shows. And I know a lot of people now, they're just like, I've got
Yeah,
6 podcasts now, and I mean, we can get a little overboard with it,
yeah,
but what I would say is, instead of maybe just bringing in the PI, maybe then, every show is a 3-part series.
hmm,
And every show, you talk to, and I know you can't, like, with privacy, but like
yeah,
hypothetically, you could have 3 sets of people. You could have in one person who is the attorney, one person who's from the insurance, and every podcast is a 3-part series, and then the third one deals with, like, the archetype of or maybe even a past client who's willing to not say their name or something like that, to speak from the perspective of the client. That is how I would do that. And so that way, when somebody sees, oh, part 1 PI, check out part 2 when we meet with the insurance adjuster. And then I go, oh, part 2, insurance adjuster,
Yeah,
check out part 3 where we meet with the victim or whatever it is.
that's a good
That's how
example.
I would balance that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, here's another one. So let's say you have a Jane Doe. Okay, she's a family law mediator. She mediates mainly divorces and custody cases, and she's concerned when marketing that she's going to be viewed as like a pro mom mediator or a pro dad mediator. And this whole thing about neutrality and impartiality will always keep coming up to mediators because that's like the crux, right? That's what sets us apart from lawyers who are advocates, who are fighting for their client, who are representing
Right.
somebody. And so, what would you say to that person who doesn't want to be, I guess, seen, doesn't want to be pigeonholed, doesn't want to be cornered and have the public think, I can't go to that person because they seem too one sided?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's about balancing who's beside you, because what I'm hearing is I'm afraid with my content that people are going to pigeonhole me. So
Alienation.
then
Yeah.
that's where you have to be careful about developing a content plan and making sure that there's balance in it. And I've been developing I mean, I was a pastor at 18, so I would plan out my whole year of
Mhm.
Sunday morning, Sunday school, Sunday night, Wednesday night, speaking minimum of 4 times a week for roughly 30 to 45 minutes. And how do you not just basically say the same thing over and over and over? And so I would sit there and I would have to plan out, I'm going to use this style. I'm going to use this, I'm going to talk about this sort of aspect of what we do. And I would just kind of do that. And we do that. We do the same thing for our clients is we develop content plans where we say, this is what we're going to talk about this month. These are the 4 breakdowns of it. These are some of the general questions that are going to come out of it. And when you sit down and actually plan out what you want to get out there, it allows you to take the balanced approach that you need when you have that fear of alienation of one group by speaking to another. And that's
Mhm.
essentially what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's
So
it. Mhm.
so whoever that group is, and whether it's, it doesn't have to be a podcast, doesn't have to be YouTube, although I'm a big proponent of modern
Video.
media and
Yep.
all that it does. But however you market, however you present yourself, make sure there's balance between the different sides. If you have a mediation, and you want to talk about divorce mediation, one is with, one lady standing there, and then the next time, here's the guy standing there happy. And that's the balance. It's just constantly paying attention, because when we do what's in front of us and what makes sense in the moment, more often than not, we end up looking back and seeing that we did not have balance.
Mm.
It takes planning to be balanced.
Yep.
Otherwise, we do what's comfortable, natural, and easy. And
Mhm.
so when I'm in any sort of marketing conundrum for my clients where they do have, like you talk about, the alienation of sides,
Yeah.
that's when I say, okay, planning is how we beat this. We plan for every woman, we have a man. For every man, we have, a woman and a man that are both happy next to each other.
Yep.
For every lawyer, I have an insurance adjuster. For every insurance adjuster, I have a client. So I'm always keeping that balance so that
Yep.
anybody can take an objective look and just see, okay, this person is on all sides.
Yep. Yep. No, that's good. So thank you so much. So as we start closing out, so what are some general tips you would give to lawyers, mediators, and arbitrators? We didn't talk about arbitrators too much. I think arbitrators feel towards mediators like mediators feel towards lawyers. Okay, they just kind of steal the limelight, and so
Okay.
arbitrators are people. They're basically like private judges, basically, but they're very similar to mediators because they're very neutral. Well, they have to be neutral in whatever they're
Okay.
doing. So, what are some general tips before we close out, and then I'll show your website again one more time so people
I,
can know where to
I'm
go.
I'm going to give what I always try to remind anybody who's marketing. And that is, marketing does not go from you outwards. That's what we think of as marketing. In other words, I'm the superhero and I'm the one that, needs to be recognized for my greatness. All good marketing starts with the person you want to eventually reach and works backwards towards you. And so, if to any of these categories, I would be asking myself, who is my end user, and then how do I build a strategy that speaks to them in a way where they feel like they're educated, empowered, and I've brought some, some authoritative positioning where they're giving me credit for it, In other words, don't copy and paste off the bar website, onto your website for content. You know, come up with it yourself, whether it's spoken, written, video, audio, whatever. But when you work backwards from the client to yourself, and this is really in any marketing, but especially um, business based authoritative positioning, when you work from them to you, the marketing often looks very different than when we build our marketing from us to the world. And so that's my biggest piece of advice for any professional
Mhm.
when trying to build a marketing strategy. We could throw out that M word if you hate it because it makes you feel dirty and you're in the legal industry. A client acquisition strategy, if you will.
Mhm.
It always needs to work from them back to you instead of the reversal.
Yes, yeah, there's so much more we could keep talking about. Like I was listening to you on somewhere else. You're talking about lawyers not being just a commodity, but sharing their knowledge. You've said so many other insightful things. I encourage folks to follow you and go check out some of the other recordings that you've put online that talk about this thing. I mean, it's free education, and I'm all
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
So,
And we've been putting a ton out there. My goal is to do 100 guest spots this year, and I'm launching two
wow,
shows. One's produced my first month. The other one we're in pre-production with. I just want to decide on two concepts. But yeah, there's lots out there.
yeah,
I'd love to be a help. You could just look me up on any like YouTube, Apple. You look me up, and I'll show up in all the different episodes that I'm on, and hopefully I can be of help to you. Or our YouTube channel as well, the
yes.
Legal Podcast Network. I have my team tries to keep up with them. Some days 2 or 3 will come in, and it takes them a day or two, but they have the majority of any appearances that I have on our channel as well.
Yes, yes. And if folks want to follow up with you, the best place is thelegalpodcastnetworks.com, or is there another website?
No, that is our website. As you can see there, new inquiries, you can call in or email in, and that'll immediately get forwarded probably to myself or one of my trained teammates. But yeah, that's the best way. And then if you want to connect with me personally, LinkedIn is great. Although I turned on two-factor authorization and I'm locked out for a couple of days. So if you add me
Yeah,
today, don't or whatever, by this time this comes out, we
sure.
should be fine. But it's it's been one of those mornings. But
We
yeah,
we get
LinkedIn's
it.
a great place because with
Yeah.
LinkedIn, we're always trying to provide value. So with LinkedIn, I'm not just talking about marketing. I mean, I've been running remote companies for over 20 years. I have 40
Mhm.
people from California to the Philippines. I talk about like mindset and, just basically anything I can do to be of value. Yes, marketing is my core thing,
Yep.
but I'd like to think I know more than just that. Just like law, right? But you'd like
Yeah.
to think you know more than just law.
Absolutely. Me too. All right. Dennis DM Meador. Thank you so much for coming on the LMIpodcast.com. And everybody, check this video out and all the other ones on LMIpodcast.com and YouTube. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.